were still members of Tomato, but it was it was a bunch of people that had a really bad 1980s, and we came together to say, I'll watch your back because I really like what you do.
I thought it was like some Southern Death Cult or something. And the Essex, like, you know, one of those like maypole dancing clubs or something.
If only. No, that would have been something.
Experimental Soundfield was a big moment for you. Just tell us about what that actually was.
In 1992, I think Michael Levis of Glastonbury fame gave us, and a bunch of friends who were people like Function One Sound System, Shiva Photonics, these great people with making projections. They gave us our own field, and we set up a tower in the middle of the field and a quadraphonic sound system around the audience. And on one night, I think we played for about 18 hours, and it was quite an experience. I have to tell you.
You've always had a very unconventional way of playing. I mean, just the fact you bring in an SSL desk into the... I mean, no two sets are the same. I mean, I actually noticed tonight you got a set list, but I remember back in the day when you'd end up playing 4 songs.
Yeah.
So where did that kind of approach come from?
Well,
it's like the original trance.
In the early days, it was driven by what we'd learned from the 80s, which was no matter how much we rehearsed or what we did with our sets, the best gigs were always where something went disastrously wrong, and somehow the energy in the room would change. We'd be excited, the audience would be excited. So the prescription I felt for the 90s was we will never rehearse anything. Let everything unfold and fall apart, and somehow come back together again.
And it's like jamming then every night.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So even though there's about 8 songs on that list, you might never get past the first one, even tonight.
The 90s, if only they were with us now. We could play one song all night.
Movies, massive part of your relationship with Danny Boyle. Trainspotting obviously changed everything. How is it working with him? And the other thing, I mean, they had this track on this film, and it was clearly, and it should be a single, but you guys never wanted to release it as a single, so I had this like 9 months of going on Radio 1, calling you out, like, and arguing with Steve Hall. Why didn't you want it to be a single?
we were still in recovery from the 80s of trying to do everything right, you know? And that's the single, so we'll push that and we'll sell that and we'll believe that. And we just, in the 90s, we just don't want to do that anymore. So we were kind of awkward and sometimes stupidly awkward.
This actually came out as an instrumental anyway first, and then I was...
the breakbeaty version was the first.
And it became like the drinking party anthem of all time, but at a time when you actually didn't intend it to be that. It wasn't about that.
Well, it was a weird one, really, because that was sort of my pathetic attempt at asking for a bit of help with the falling down water. But the funny thing about that appeal for us to release it as a single was, I remember, probably inspired by you, Steve Hall sent out, from Junior Boys Home, sent out the 100 surveys to DJs all over the country, and 99 of them came back going, you have to release this as a single, it's an amazing floor filler. And there was one guy that said it's a pile of shit. And
you went with him.
It was from our hometown in Cardiff, top rank. So we still to this day we think he's the man.
We got Cardiff. And then the Danny Boyle relationship leads you to do this incredible job of basically, you were the musical director of the London Olympics.
Yeah, what an opportunity.
Or what a job.
There was some small amounts of stress, but
large.
Actually, that 2-year period with the
How long did that take
Frankenstein
you, by
at the
the way?
National Theatre, and then into that was a remarkable phase in our lives, actually. Yeah.
Highlights of the Olympics for you?
The volunteers. I ended up having to choreograph and work with 1,000 drummers, which wasn't what I hadn't expected that, and that was life-changing, actually. Yeah.
And that kind of caused a sabbatical for you two, where you kind of you didn't fall out, but you stopped working together, and then it all came back together when you basically 20-year anniversary of Dubbing the Bass with my Headman.
We did, yeah. Well, we carried on touring together. We did solo projects and working with other people, but we were touring around the world together at the same time and still enjoying that. But then when it was the anniversary of Dubbing the Bass with my head, we decided. Well, Rick twisted my arm very, very well and got us both back out on the road again doing Dubbing the Bass, and we had a lot of fun doing that and just revisiting that sound of that time and the things that were going through our head, and it was brilliant. And we were playing in really nice places like you know, opera houses and concert halls and classical concerts that had really nice toilets, and that kind of swung the deal. So, but we had a fantastic time, and I think
that kind of re-energised you. Like,
yeah,
it was like marriage then, a little bit of separation.
Well, we learnt a lot as well by working apart, and we had a great time on that. And we thought, well, let's see what happens when we get back together in the studio.
And how is it now? What do you want to do next? What is there still to achieve for Underworld?
Oh well,
I like that. Whoever's doing that.
I think you'll find out in a few days.
I was going to say in a few days. Right?
Well, yeah, in a few days you'll find out what we're up to next. But you know, releasing things the way we want to release them. There was a cool thing about the '90s was that we tended to make it up as we went along, and that was all right. That was acceptable then. And it's become not so acceptable, and the magic has a way of being pushed away by money and systems, which need, you know, things need to know when people are happening. But the great thing about dance music was it was outsider culture. You know, the first big acid house parties, they just made it up as they went along, and it was very much we are outsiders. We just get invited to the top table occasionally, and so for us, they're finding that spark of magic where you don't really know what we're going to do next, but you wake up one day and you say, we're going to release something, a film about Iceland that we're just going to drop, and it'll get played, and then we'll move on to something else.
And when you get an award like this tonight and you see that film, is there a moment in your career where is there one moment you always look back to at one gig, or is it always excitement about the next one?
Excitement about the next one. Yeah.
Well, when was the last one in Ibiza?
I think we started Space.
I think we played Space not long before it. Was it? Probably. I know we kind of come in and go, and then we leave again. So it's this is actually probably the longest we've ever stayed.
I think there's something. I was going to ask you what's in store tonight. I'm not going to give the game away, but I saw the set list and there's actually a track you haven't played before. Is that right?
Yeah.
You're looking at me like you're taking the game away.
Yeah, I'm looking at you
Because
I said back then, don't say anything.
I didn't say the name.
No, but you want me to say it.
You don't have to say that.
All right.
It could be a thrower track. You haven't played.
It might be.
No, this is all gone.
It might be something from Lonnie Donegan.
No,
when you hear the one you don't know, that's the one they've not played.
There you go.
But you might recognise it. But it's a great pleasure to have you back on the island tonight and to be giving you this award, and congratulations on an incredible career and your contribution to not only music but the whole art of electronic music and what you do. So give it up one more time.
Keep it fun.
And you got a pretty damn good warm-up, DJ. This man. Give it up for Sunday.